Okay. I don't want to undress myself. Just gonna take a second. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Oh, God. Ooh. We're in the book of Genesis, and we're in chapter 43. Okay. Hey, everybody, how's it going? I was just putting on a show earlier. I'm perfectly fine. Starting in verse 15. So the men took the president and Benjamin, took little brother, and took double the money in their hand. They arose, went down to Egypt. They stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home, slaughter an animal, and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon." And the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Verse 18, now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. And they said, "Is it because of the money which we returned in the sacks the first time, or which was returned in our sacks, that we brought in so that he can make a case against us and seize us and take us as slaves with our donkeys?" Not just them, but they're making slaves of the donkeys too. They were tough times. 19, when they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked to them at the door of the house. "Oh, sir, we indeed come down to you the first time to buy food. And when it happened, when we came back, the money was in the sack." And they're explaining it to them. So they explain it in verse 23. But he said, "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given the treasure in your sacks, and I had your money." That's strange. That was not true, but Peace be with you. Shalom. And he brought Simeon out to them. So the man brought the men to Joseph's house, gave them water, washed their feet, gave their donkeys feed, and they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon. And they heard that they'd eat bread there. And Joseph came home, and they brought him the present. They bowed before him, and they asked, and so he asked, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" Verse 28, they answered, "Your servant, our father, is in good health, and he is still alive." They bowed their heads down, prostrated themselves. Then he lifted his eyes, and he saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Now his heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep, and he went into his chamber and wept there. And he washed his face, came out, restrained himself, and said, "Serve the bread." So they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that was an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at each other, astonished. Then he took servings to them from before him, but Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of the heirs. So they drank and were merry. So, interesting. So, a couple of things. I had to look at my notes. I have very vague and ambiguous notes written here. Herodotus writes of 3 groups of tables here. He's an ancient historian, and he speaks of there was a table with the Jewish guys, the Hebrew guys, a table of the Egyptians, and then there was a table with Joseph, Benjamin, and kind of Joseph's royal party. To have the brothers sit down according to their age, boom, 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 in order. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and you know the order from there. It's a 1 in 39,917,000 chance. If you're a note taker, the chances of guessing the order of the sons was 1 in 39,917,000. And it gives Joseph gives Benjamin 5 times as much food, which, again, going back up some ancient historians, Spartans would give a double portion to the oldest son. People of Crete, the Cretans, would give 4 times, and it was an Egyptian thing to give 5 times as much. Not sure where I got those notes from, but I wrote them down from some book of some guy who probably knew what he was talking about. And honestly, all this stuff's going on. And I think the whole time Joseph's just observing his brothers to see how they're going to respond and to see, what is it they're going to do as they try and figure out what's going on here. And so verse 1 of chapter 44, it says, he commanded the steward of the house, saying, fill the men's sack with food, as much as they can carry, put his money in the mouth of the sack, and also put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So they did it. They sent them off on their donkeys. They're going out there. And he tells his steward now, go chase them down. Follow the men. When you overtake them, say, why have you repaid evil for good? And is not one of you the one who stolen the cup, indeed, that the Lord with which he indeed practices divination. So an Egyptian thing, the divination cup where they'd watch things float around and tell the future. I'm not thinking Joseph did that, but I'm sure he had the cup. It's one of those ones where Joseph's a good example. May I say that throughout the Bible, there are examples of people working in pagan and evil job places because God seemed to lead them there. And those people remained there, trying to do God's good, having to kind of even partake a little of the evil. It's hard to say that, but I mean, like, Joseph had the cup. Did he actually do divination? Probably not. He married a priest's daughter. I'm sure he had to go over to the in-laws and get lunch sometime. I'm just going to stop here. Maybe this is a good little spot. I wanted to keep going. But, I did a little study once, and I don't have it all memorized, but I think it was when we were learning about Obadiah, and not the book of Obadiah, or at least most think it's not the book of Obadiah, but Obadiah, the servant of King Ahab. And he's the one who went and hid a bunch of prophets in caves so they wouldn't be killed by mean Queen Jezebel. And so here's a guy working for Ahab. He's like a right-hand guy. I have a hard time believing that he didn't have to do some things sometimes that he really didn't want to do. What he did, we don't know. But at the same time, because of his position, he was allowed to save the lives of all these prophets. Here's Joseph under the Pharaoh of Egypt, king of Egypt, and he has to be involved with Egyptian sorcery and all that kind of stuff in the sense of he's around it, and he probably has to stand quietly and respectfully at ceremonies. Who knows? But the fact is that die-hard, Jesus-loving, Bible-believing Christians may end up in some weird places, and it'd be easy for others to judge them, but it's by their fruit we need to judge, not the fruit of the company they're working for. There are many companies worth quitting your job. I don't think God's going to bless you as a Christian stripper, but there are jobs and there are places where, it's like, why would you choose to work for there? And it's like, well, God might lead someone there and they might be able to do a lot of good there. And so it's just that reminder that wherever God places us, we can be used as long as we're openly seeking to be used and we're asking God how to be used. And there may be some appearance of evil, but at the same time, there might be a lot of open doors that we would never have otherwise. I'll close and I'll say this. I've had people say to me who weren't public school teachers, it's like, oh, I would just be, doing this and that until they fired me. And it's like, well, no, you don't want to try and get fired because then you don't have the opportunity to witness all these kids. And you might not want to be so bold as to, start off every quarter, with the Apostles' Creed and explain to children, all the different doctrinal points and this and that. But opportunities will come up for you to share your faith, to have one-on-one conversations and sometimes group conversations that were within your rights to have and keep things safe. And truthfully, it was my ministry to a bunch of high schoolers that eventually had me end up moving to Grandview, and now I'm the pastor of a church. And it all started with me working for a pagan organization known as the public school system. So, all that said, we'll see more of Joseph and his brothers tomorrow, Wednesday. There we go. God bless you guys. Have an amazing day, and I will see you guys then. Adios.